Don't you dare. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the dry heat like a knife. Cole didn't blink. The flame licked higher, orange against the settling dusk. The last sliver of sun slid beneath the ridge as though it didn't want to witness what came next. Mara's black morning dress stirred around her ankles, the breeze carrying the scent of hot dust and creaking leather. Someone in the crowd shifted. Another swallowed hard. Mara, Cole said, almost gently, almost mocking. It's too late. The flame touched the edge of the papers. A gasp rippled through the street. Sharp, frightened, helpless. The crackle of burning paper followed, the sound brittle and loud enough to echo off the empty water trough by the post road. Mara lunged forward, but Cole stepped back, lifting the burning document just out of reach. Her boots skidded in the dust as she caught herself, the fire reflecting in her teary eyes. "You think you can bury the truth?" she said, her voice shaking. Not with fear, but with anger gathering like a storm behind her ribs. Cole let the fire eat upward, the smoke curling around his hand. "Truth," he snorted. "Your husband died chasing stories that weren't his to tell." Someone muttered in the crowd. "Quick, guilty," silenced by Cole's sharp glance. Horses snorted from their hitching posts, as if the tension choked the air they breathed. Mara watched the last corner of the paper curl inward, blackening, turning to ash that scattered across her boots. For a moment her face emptied, of breath, of color, of everything but the raw wound of loss. She didn't blink as the final embers drifted to the ground, glowing like dying stars. "You didn't have to do that," she said. Cole tossed the charred scrap aside. "I did." Mara stepped closer, close enough to smell the smoke clinging to him, close enough for the town to see the fire in her expression returning, steadying, hardening. Cole frowned as if he hadn't expected her to stand this straight after watching her last hope burn. "I'm not done," she said softly. Cole's jaw tightened. The crowd exchanged anxious glances. No one dare move. The street felt smaller, tighter, as if the canyon walls themselves had shifted inward. A door creaked somewhere behind them. A man coughed. A tumbleweed rolled slow and silent past Mara's heel. Cole nodded once, cold. "You are." For a heartbeat, everything froze, the air, the dust, the weight hanging over the town. Then Cole turned his back on her. The townsfolk parted for him, quiet as shadows, shame following them like a long evening tale. Mara stood alone in the settling dark, ash clinging to her dress, grief tightening into something sharper. Sundown swallowed the last light, leaving only the widow and the empty road, and the promise in her eyes that this was far from over. Moonlight pooled across the desert floor as Mara stumbled through the scrub, her breath sharp in the cold night air. The ashes from the burned papers still clung to her dress, brushing off in gray streaks each time the wind pushed past her. A lone coyote cried somewhere beyond the ridge, its voice rising thin and eerie through the canyon's hollow spaces. She didn't slow. Her boots scraped against the cracked earth, stirring little clouds of dust that drifted behind her like fading echoes of what Cole had destroyed. A lantern bobbed in the distance, Sheriff Tate's worn silhouette appearing over the rise. He halted when he saw her. "Mara," he called, voice low-strained. "You shouldn't be out here." She walked past him without a word. He reached for her arm, then stopped mid-motion as if her grief burned too hot to touch. "Look, I'm sorry for what he did. But you push him now, you'll only get hurt worse." "I'm already hurt," she answered, not looking back. "And I'm not done yet." The sheriff's shoulders sagged. He didn't follow. Mara pressed deeper into the desert. Dry grass brushed her skirt, clicking softly. The sky had turned a deep indigo, stars scattered like cold nails above. Each step felt heavier, like walking into a memory she wasn't ready to face. A figure waited ahead, slumped against a boulder, whittling something small with a pocket knife. The old man didn't look up right away. "You walk loud tonight," Jonah Briggs rasped. Mara stopped inches from him. "I'm looking for answers." Jonah's blade scraped wood, slow and deliberate. Shavings fell onto his boots. "Answers don't come out here. Only echoes." I found something before he died, she said. A map. A mark he carved. He hid it from Cole. Jonah's knife paused. His eyes lifted, tired, rimmed red from drink or years or both. Your husband was chasing a fire he knew would burn him. He wasn't alone, she replied. Jonah grunted, a sound halfway between a sigh and a warning. He shoved the small wooden toy into her hand. A tiny horse, rough and unpainted. You think justice is waiting out in that canyon? It ain't. Only bones and memories. Then I'll dig up what's buried. Jonah watched her for a long moment, the lantern light shaping deep canyons in his face. You're walking into a shadow. That canyon don't forgive. Mara tightened her grip on the carving. Neither do I. A breeze rolled past, cool against her cheeks, carrying the scent of mesquite and something older. Earth disturbed, secrets rising with the wind. Jonah stood slowly, joints cracking like dry branches. If you're going, he said, picking up his lantern, you won't go alone. The desert deepened around them as they stepped forward, the night closing like a door behind their backs. Ahead, the canyon waited, dark, hollow, and listening. Mara's lantern flickered, throwing trembling gold against the canyon walls as she pushed deeper into the narrow throat of stone. The air cooled instantly, swallowing sound, turning each footstep into a hollow, repeating echo. Pebbles shifted under her boots. Jonah's slower steps followed behind, his breath steady, his silhouette wavering along the canyon's jagged edges. A scrap of paper fluttered at her feet. Mara knelt and brushed away a thin layer of red dust. Her husband's handwriting glimmered faintly under the lantern glow, lines, symbols, and notes in his precise hand. He was here, she whispered. Jonah crouched beside her, the leather of his coat creaking softly. Left in a hurry, looks like. Cole must have spooked him close. Mara folded the paper carefully and stood. The canyon tightened, stone pressing inward, funneling them toward a darker bend. Wind drifted through the narrow passage like a sigh, carrying with it the faint rattle of something metallic further ahead. Mara raised her lantern. Papers lay scattered around a fallen saddlebag, pages held down by rocks her husband had hurriedly placed. A ledger, a water rights book, names, dates. Cole's signature repeated in two neat lines that looked like lies carved into paper. Mara's throat tightened. She reached out, fingertips grazing her husband's final work. A tremble moved through her, not weakness, but something waking, stretching, remembering. Jonah watched her quietly. You carry in something heavy, he said. Feels familiar. Mara didn't answer. She stepped back, drew her husband's revolver from her belt, and lifted it toward a bleached stump half buried in sand. Her arm steadied as if pulled by muscle memory. Bang! The shot cracked across the canyon, booming into itself, multiplying. A second echo chased the first, then a third, rolling like distant thunder through the stone maze. Dust rained down in soft streams along the walls. Jonah's brows lifted. You've been holding out on this town. I've buried this part of me, she said, lowering the gun. He asked me to. Wanted a quiet life. And now, Mara holstered the revolver. Quiet's gone. A shadow shifted deeper in the canyon. Just a flick like someone ducking behind a rock. Jonah tensed, hand brushing his old pistol. But no one appeared. Instead, a scrap of fabric, her husband's, hung from a thorny branch wedged high in a crack of stone. Mara reached up, pulled it free, feeling the frayed edges where it had torn during his last desperate climb. Her breath caught. On the underside of the cloth, drawn in charcoal, was the symbol he'd carved into the map. A simple mark, a warning, a direction. She turned slowly, lantern raised. The mark pointed toward a narrow split in the canyon wall, almost invisible in the shadows. Jonah followed her gaze. Reckon that's where the truth waits. Mara stepped toward the split, lantern held steady, her voice low but sure. Then we're done searching. The canyon swallowed their footsteps as they slipped into the hidden passage, the darkness folding around them like a held breath waiting to break. Gunmetal dawn spread over the town as Mara stepped into the square, dust lifting around her boots with every calm stride. Cole Braddock stood before the courthouse, surrounded by his hired guns, the forged deeds glinting in his fist. The townsfolk gathered in tight clusters, whispering, shifting, waiting for someone else to breathe first. Mara dropped the canyon documents at Cole's feet. Pages fanned across the gritty ground. Names, signatures, maps, all stripped bare by the early light. Cole's jaw hardened. You should have stayed quiet. Jonah Briggs stood just behind her, one hand resting loosely near his holster, eyes scanning the rooftops, windows, doorways, every place a gun could hide. His lantern, still dusted red, swung softly at his side. Mara's gaze didn't move from Cole. You forged every claim. You stole water, land, lives. Her voice stayed low, but carried through the tense morning air. And my husband died trying to stop you. Cole stepped forward, boots grinding over the evidence. This town belongs to men who take it. That's the way it's always been. Not today, Mara said. Cole's men reached for their guns. Jonah's pistol cleared leather before the first glint of metal left their holsters. 3 shots, clean, controlled, rang out across the empty street. 3 guns flew from 3 hands, skittering across the dirt. Dust rose in startled clouds. The crowd froze. Cole's face twisted. You old bastard. But Mara was already moving. The revolver lifted in her hand as if it had never left her grasp in all the years she'd tried to forget it. The morning sun caught the barrel, flashing bright. Cole fired first. Mara didn't flinch. Her bullet struck his weapon mid-shot, knocking it from his hand in a sharp metallic clatter. The sound cracked through the street like a lightning strike. Cole staggered back, staring at the empty space where his gun had been. Mara didn't aim at him. She didn't need to. The sheriff finally pushed through the crowd, breathless, pale, sweat shining on his brow. Cole Braddock, he forced out, voice shaking. You're under arrest for forgery, land theft, and for what you did to Henry Ellridge. Cole lunged, not toward the sheriff, but toward Mara. She didn't step back. His boots tore across the dirt, hands outstretched, face twisted with fury. Mara stood rooted, steady, unyielding, her shadow long and dark behind her. Jonah moved, but he was too far. Cole reached her and stopped, not from a bullet, not from fear, from the sudden roar of voices as the town surged forward, finally breaking, finally brave. Hands pulled him off balance, dragged him down, held him to the earth he'd tried to steal. Mara didn't move while they bound him. She just watched the man who had burned her last hope the night before, who now lay helpless in the dust. The sheriff lifted his hat to her. Widow Ellridge, you saved us all. Mara exhaled, long and trembling, the first breath that didn't hurt. Jonah stepped beside her. You warned him, he said softly. I did. The sun rose fully then, spilling gold across the square, catching the papers at her feet, truth shining bright at last. And the old storyteller's voice drifted through time. So ends the tale of the widow who said, don't you dare, and dare to stand where no one else would.